Arc de Triomphe of France. It is said that no city in the world can match Paris when it comes to iconic landmarks and attractions. Paris is filled with great monuments that tell all different kinds of beautiful stories. From the Cathedral of Notre Dame, to the Eiffel Tower, to the Arc de Triomphe, and many more. France's history is in its architecture. To get to know France, simply explore its architecture. One of the architectures to explore is the Arc de Triomphe, which translates to Arcs of Triumph in English. If you love stories of war, success, and victory, you will find this 50 meters high monument filled with them. It was ordered and initially commissioned by Napoleon on his birthday on August 15, 1806. He wanted to honor the Grande Armée, which is what the French army was then called. This was at the peak of his victories, and came after his Austerlitz victory in 1805. The army had conquered most of Europe and was, at the time, considered to be invincible. The emperor was said to have told his army that when it returned, it would be through Arches of Triumph, hence the name. The arch is 50 meters high, 45 meters wide, and 22 meters deep, and it sits in a circular plaza with 12 dodecagonal grand avenues radiating from it and forming a star, or étoile. Both the arch and the plaza in which it sits are located at the right bank of the Seine and is the meeting point of 12 major roads. It stands in the western end of the Champs-Élysées, right at the Place Charles de Gaulle Center. Until 1970, it was previously known as Place de l'Étoile. The change of name was in commemoration for the famous general and president after whom it was named. The foundations of the arch took 2 years to lay. When Napoleon was to return with his Austrian bride, the Archduchess Marie-Louise, in 1810, a temporary wooden structure of the finished arch was erected. This helped the architect Jean-François Chelgren, who designed the Arc de Triomphe, see where his corrections were to be made. Unfortunately, he passed on in 1811. Jean-Nicolas Hiot took over the work, and directed by the French politician Henricat de Thury. In all, it took about 3 architects to see the completion of its construction. This is partly because work has been halted a few times and for years, including during the Bourbon Revolution, specifically from Napoleon's abdication in 1814 to 1826. From its commissioning to completion, it took a total of 36 years, 1806 to 1836. It was completed by King Louis-Philippe on July 29, 1836. Even the emperor did not see its completion. He died in 1821, long before its completion. When the remains of Napoleon were brought back to France, on their way to their final resting place in Invalides, they passed under the arch. The coffins of many other French luminaries, including Ferdinand Foch and Victor Hugo, have also lain in state at the foot of the arch before proceeding to their places of interment. The Arc de Triomphe, or Arc de Triomphe de l'Étoile, as it's also called, is a true historical monument. It has the names of hundreds of generals inscribed on it and the different battles in which the French were victorious, majorly those of the Napoleonic Wars and the French Revolution. The Arc's 4 pedestals also feature decorative high-relief sculptures from Antoine Etix, Jean Quartat, and François Rude, with the most popular of these sculptural works being that of François Rude, the departure of the Volunteers of 1792, also known as La Marseillaise. The Volunteers are a group of people who volunteered to fight in the French army during the Revolution. Among many more sculptures you will find on the body of the arch is that of Napoleon being crowned by the goddess of victory. There's no better place to begin learning about the rich history of France than the body of the Arc de Triomphe, which took about a total of 9.3 million French francs to construct. Take note that this was in the 19th century. That amount would represent so much money today after inflation. One of the arch's most famous features is the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. It was buried underneath in the memory and honor of all the soldiers who lost their lives in the Great War, but who were not identified. At 1830 hours, a flame is lit every day to honor these soldiers and all unnamed casualties of war across the world. This was inaugurated on Armistice Day in 1920 and has remained, burning like an eternal flame to this day. Every 11th of November, a ceremony is held at the tomb of the unknown soldier. It's the anniversary of the November 11th, 1918 armistice signed by Germany and the Entente powers. The Pantheon was the initial place the unknown soldiers' remains were to be buried, but a decision was made to bury them underneath the arch after a letter-writing campaign. On November 10, 1920, his coffin was put in the chapel located in the Arc's first floor, and on January 28, 1921, relocated to its final resting place. Interestingly, since 1920, every military procession or parade has gone round the arch, instead of under and through it. Whether this is out of superstition or respect of the tomb is unsure. And there have been many victory parades or military processions around the arch. These include those of France and its allies, and also of invading nations such as Germany. The notable parades of France and its allies took place in 1918, in 1944 when Paris was liberated during the Second World War, and after the war in Europe in 1945. Those of invading forces such as Germany took place in 1871 and 1940. A visit to the Arc de Triomphe will certainly do more for you in experience and knowledge than any documentary or article. The views from the top will leave you breathless. All of Paris can be viewed from up there, and the Parisian sky you will see is a beauty to behold. But to get to the top, you will either have to use the 283 steps from the ground to the top, or go from the ground to part way with an elevator, from which point you must complete the journey using the steps.